Batman must save Gotham.
Saving Gotham City across 3 Batman Arkham games took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from the Caped Crusader, and from me, for I am Platman, because I got all the game's platinums. Yes, it took me a few weeks to do all of Asylum, City, and Night, but of course for Batsy, he did it all in a night's work. I remember first entering into Rocksteady's extended Batman universe back in 2009, in the days when demos were trusty and relevant, and that just a half hour of demo play can entice you to buy the full product. Playing the small intro portion to Arkham Asylum signaled to me that a great game awaited, that a new type of superhero game had been created. But alas, as a 12-year-old, time and funds were limited, so my journey into Night was put on hold. Over the last decade, I've seen and heard a lot of talk about how fun and memorable the experiences were from the legendary Dark Knight trilogy of games, with most of the commentary and praise centered on the batshit acrobatic combat physics that are now well known and imitated by other games, most notably Insomniac's Spider-Man, which I played recently and enjoyed. But after playing the Arkham trilogy, I can confidently say that Spider-Man, as a game, is as overrated and nearly as unnecessary as I thought it was. You see, after playing Batman Arkham, you realize just how ahead of its time the series was, considering that a game like Spider-Man 2018, made almost a decade later, a game which owes everything about its combat to Batman's blueprint, barely scratches the surface of the fundamentals of design that Arkham makes capable. I really don't need to take anything away from Spider-Man to prop up Batman here, but it should go without saying that Spider-Man is redundant when Arkham exists. But the greatest compliment I can give to Batman Arkham is that they can not only be compared extremely favorably to the comic books, animated series, and films, but they enhance the reputation of the characters and even give birth to some of the most exciting and faithful versions of the heroes and supervillains of all of the many iterations. The Arkham games were truly special and innovative for a number of reasons, but the fighting mechanics on display are some of the best of all time in a video game series. It's here that you don't simply enact the cliche of getting to feel like Batman, but rather you feel like a crime-fighting cartoon character that could only exist inside of a video game. Everything about Batman Arkham's combat is smooth, from how the player glides gracefully across the screen in free flow, knocking thugs around like loose bowling pins, to the myriad onomatopoeias yielded from the impact of Batman's gadgets and the unmistakable sound effect emitted from cracking skulls. And of course, you get to perform some of the most stylish and satisfying finisher moves in gaming history. It seems that no matter where you are in the open world, when you perform a finisher, there's always some cinematic variation on exhibit when touching up goons. I've seen so many different kinds of finishers that I'm convinced they might be infinite, and this makes the combat never feel old. In Batman Arkham, combos are actual combos and they take some degree of skill and reflexes to pull off. Spider-Man's combat is like a college kid basing their entire research paper on how to make a good superhero game based off of their professor's field of study, and simply not adding anything new of their own to the equation. Spider-Man gave us web slinging. In Arkham, you get to put on a cape, fly, and use a full utility belt at your disposal. There's a blend of dreamlike quality as well as a valid explanation for how Batman and friends move and act the way they do. Of course, he has an aerodynamic suit that allows him to fly and move so swiftly. He's got armored padding, but he isn't bulletproof, which makes you use your head in stealth encounters. Catwoman herself is an anomaly. Skilled in stealth, stealing, and sex, she cannot go anywhere or perform any action without looking and sounding sexy. The fact that they didn't simply repurpose Batman's moves for his allies but created entirely new gadgets and animations shows you that the developers were passionate about this universe. The dialogue by the voice actors is theatrical and humorous, with an all-star cast of veterans and luminary figures such as Maurice LaMarche, Wally Wingert, Nolan North, Troy Baker, Tara Strong, Grey Delisle, and the original animated cast of Arlene Sorkin, Mark Hamill, and of course, the late but great Kevin Conroy, who died right before I started playing the series. Many times while playing, I simply stood around listening to the conversations play out, always entertained and impressed by the effort that went into writing these adaptations, which were penned by one of the longtime comic writers, Paul Dini. Even in sections where you're supposed to press a button to trigger a cinematic, there's optional dialogue that continues to unfold, and it's a treat to experiment and uncover such secrets. It's the charisma, the performances, and the creativity in the writing that makes Batman Arkham feel authentic. A true extension of the Batman lore, and the detail of the open worlds make the games feel timeless to explore. I usually see Asylum as my favorite. It introduced many of the mechanics that act as the lifeblood of the games, such as the combat and detective features. And of course the dynamic duo between tall, dark, and brooding Batman juxtaposed against the inescapable gravity of Joker's devious antics. These opposites attract, giving us the real two sides of the same coin, each acting to the other as one of the greatest complementary foils in storytelling history. Joker is naturally the star of Asylum, if not the entire franchise, orchestrating chaos and unrest that to him is nothing more than an elaborate prank. It's the same Joker we know and love, but with Hamill's trademark accent and cackle. He's both character and caricature, supported by Harley in her original capacity as his comic relief, along with some episodes featuring the supernatural villains such as Killer Croc and Poison Ivy. The science experiment gone wrong, Bane, and the cocky and ever annoying, omniscient mockery of the Riddler proves that, as always, Batman hosts the most interesting criminals in all of comics. I love the atmosphere of Asylum, the feeling of dancing with the devil in the pale moonlight while being boxed in with the crazies. You're on Joker's home turf, with Batman being slightly out of his element. The story is more minimal and focused in the sequels, with the Joker stockpiling enough toxic gas to make even himself more ill than he already is. This plot bleeds into Arkham City, where we get one of the most daring plot twists in any comic book media. Asylum, like its sequel, gets a 9 out of 10 for me. Across both these games, there are fantastic encounters and character interactions. Take the Calendar Man, one of the most deranged characters I've heard of, real or fictitious, as he recounts his horrific murders corresponding to each holiday of the year. He is, of course, completely insane, but fascinatingly creepy. I really liked how Mr. Freeze was presented in City, how he felt human, intelligent, and formidable, especially during the tense boss fight when you're trapped with him in GCPD. The entire stakes of Arkham City are much higher than in Asylum, and the beginning of the game is only short of brilliant, with Bruce Wayne being thrown into jail to rot with the people he helped put away, with each iconic villain introduction seeming natural and welcomed. Batman gets psychoanalyzed once more, toyed with and threatened by the endangerment of those he cares about, just as Crane had tested him by subjecting him to toxins. What makes Batman so different is that he's the man who has no fear, because as a child he experienced the most fearsome thing imaginable, so nothing surprises him. Grey Delisle's sultry Catwoman is an auditory pleasure, while Tara Strong's Harley is almost like taking a sharp claw across the face, which of course is the entire point. Either way, one of the best things about these characters is that they're fun to look at as they are to listen to. Oh shit. The open worlds are riddled, literally and figuratively, with some of my favorite collectible types in games. Although collecting the hundreds of Riddler trophies is taxing, I found almost every one of them to be some of the most well thought out brain teasers in video game history. Whereas most open world collectibles are pointless, here your problem solving skills are challenged in exchange for being able to silence and humble the Riddler, and to unlock some cool artworks, lore, and challenge rooms. It's here in the challenge rooms that the real test for the Platinums begins. I learned how to become a better player by mixing up my combo variations and extending my combos longer. The gameplay here is, as always, not far from addicting. It becomes more simplistic the more you practice, especially given the often brainless nature of the enemy AI. But it remains entertaining because although it is easy to string together some success, it is also very balanced in letting you fail if you press even one wrong button at the wrong time. There's even a leaderboard showing that players are very competitive in trying to get the highest scores. The stealth sections test your pattern recognition along with the ability to improvise. Feeling scripted in some cases, the pleasure in solving these puzzles lies in knowing that there is little room for error, as one mistake can ruin the entire simulation. So in order to succeed, you must be as tactile as Batman is known to be. And this is the entire point of how to do gameplay in a video game. You present to us an awesome character like Batman, show us his potential through cutscenes and animation, and then issue the challenge to us, the player, to replicate, if not dare to surpass, that technique shown to us. Having said that, the platinum for Arkham City was a pain in the ass, especially with having to repeat all the challenges in succession and the side content in New Game Plus. But the side content is so unique in these games and so interesting that it wasn't such a burden. Arkham City got a 96 on Metacritic for the PS3 version. I think that's a little high, but I would have no issue giving it a 9 out of 10 myself. Arkham City is a great game. Arkham Knight is slightly less polished, less focused than its predecessors. The story is a bit convoluted, the missions somewhat tedious, but once again Batman is put on trial to see how far he will go, how much he will sacrifice to save his city. Mark Hamill gives a great performance as the Joker-infested inner conscience of Batman, tempting him to break his rules. And to be fair, Scarecrow makes, at least by voice, a bit of a menacing impression thanks to Jonathan Noble's work. I think it's great seeing all of the mainline villains together in a cell at GCPD, and solving the Riddler's trials to free Catwoman just further proves that he's perhaps the next best villain in the franchise after Joker. And clearly, the direct inspiration for the Saw movies. I mean, seriously, this guy's contraptions are insane as shit. The Batmobile exists in this game, but driving it often feels slow and sluggish, and its combat systems feel repetitive and scripted. I would much rather navigate by air, taking in the views of the nighttime skyline and making full use of the dive mechanics. There was better combat variety and enemy variety in Arkham City, though there are some sections with playable Robin and Nightwing that feel worthwhile. I would give Arkham Knight an 8 out of 10, as it's still a pretty good game with some good detail. Overall, there's a lot of value in these three games. They capture the spirit of the Batman mythology, showcase some of the most talented writers, actors, and animators in the industry, and provide the fun quality of escapism that we love about video games. It wasn't hard to make a good Batman game, given that he is the greatest comic book superhero. But Rocksteady went beyond and made simply a great video game franchise. Batman Forever.
Yeah!